And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Pete Riley from the design unit with the Water Department. I'm going to do a very quick presentation on site management and quality of life issues. And hopefully we're going to have a little bit of questions. Afterwards, I do encourage everybody to go out to the demo trailer, get information from these guys while they're here, get the cards, be in touch with the ADS guys if you're installing their pipe. All right. So, with the advent of the green program, PWD has gone into a lot of public spaces where we wouldn't typically be doing construction work. Schoolyards, parks, the like, and we've run into a number of community issues, nice way to put it. What we're trying to do is manage those expectations on the part of the community. So we're taking a two-pronged approach to that. One is the Public Affairs Division is making a stronger effort to reach out to the community members, be in touch with them. We have all kinds of mailings, so on and so forth for residences and affected businesses. Part two of that is going to be the management of our actual construction sites, how we keep them neat, how we keep them clean, possibly even some of the practices that we allow on our construction sites. So, I mean, the major goal is upgrading our level of service. The level of service not necessarily meaning the function of the pipes we're installing, but the service that we're rendering to the community while we're in construction, okay? How it appears to them. There are already significant quality of life requirements, site management requirements, best management practices, whatever you want to call them, in the standard contract language, in the standard technical specifications for capital projects. We're going to be looking to enforce those to a greater degree. Okay? So there is a clause in there about daily sweeping. It is a little vague. You guys are all going to call me on that. But we are going to be looking for that, okay? Just as an example. We are also working on new contract language, okay, that will probably end up initially in the green contracts. It will probably end up initially in high-profile projects, but may well end up in all capital work at some point. So, something to be aware of. Currently, we have a pilot project going on Ridge Avenue. I don't see anybody here from APC, but they're doing a water main replacement on Ridge Avenue. We're using a pilot version of these new, more stringent workplace specifications. To date, we haven't had any community complaints. We haven't had any problems. So we say our level of service to the community has been maintained. That's the whole point. So what are we really kind of talking about? These are some examples of what we would consider to be good site management practices, okay? A well fenced off construction site, right? Tree protection fencing. I know the one on the bottom right looks a little ugly because it's asphalt tar dripping out of a truck, but the contractor went through the trouble of laying down plywood to catch it rather than just letting it go on the roadway. That's the kind of little effort things that you can do to make your site far better for the residents and businesses adjacent. Things that we don't like to see. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. Uncontained trash, unconsolidated material stockpiles, unfenced or unprotected trash piles. This is actually a streets department project, so I'm going to pick on you for a minute, because I can. Lack of pedestrian protection. Okay, if you're going to close a sidewalk, you have to provide a way for the pedestrians to get around it somehow. If that's a detour, it's a detour. There are already, as I said, some specification requirements addressing each of these issues, okay? The only thing that we're trying to develop currently is strengthening these, making it so that our job sites really present the best face to the public that we can. Another major component of these is erosion and sediment control, right? You can see some of these are more egregious than others. Some of them are less so. I mean, obviously this is a dirty pipe. I mean, we just talked about pipe defects. You wouldn't install a pipe that was already dirty. You can see on the top of this pipe there's mud. That means it was muddy in the stockpile. When you install it muddy, it stays muddy. It's not going to get cleaned. This inlet was installed properly, but unfortunately it's now silted shut. There is a gutter buddy in front of it, right? Proper E&S control, but it hasn't been properly maintained. There is an inlet under here, believe it or not. There is an inlet under there. This is what we're talking about with site trash and maintaining your E&S controls. And then these are unprotected stockpiles, and you can see the mud running off of them. Conversely, our contractors have come up with new and interesting ways to protect these things, right? My particular favorite is this one for trench drains, where they just took a piece of that cheap 2-inch foam board that you can get at Home Depot, cut a little chunk out of it, caulk it in place. Trench drain is now sealed. When you remove it, you just cut the caulk. It's like it was never there, and it's watertight. Wonderful solution. That's the kind of things that we're looking for, okay? This is also actually the same trench drain. They went through the trouble of protecting the inside of the trench drain from whatever it was going to collect over the actual grate of the trench drain. They went the extra mile. They did a really good job on that project. So, I know most of you are probably familiar with what we already expect and what we're going to take a greater action in enforcing. Some of the stuff that we're considering putting on either particular projects and possibly all projects in the future. Increasing the minimum erosion and sediment controls required. We're not really sure what form that may take. It may go as far as truck washing stations on every project. It may go as far as, you know, a very clear maintenance schedule for the E&S controls in place, et cetera, et cetera. Keeping the right-of-way clear. There are various iterations of what that could possibly mean, not least of which being having an off-site material storage location. You know, most guys, when they're doing pipe work in the street, like to lay out the pipe next to the trench. As they move along, they just move the pipe in. Well, in some instances, that may not be acceptable. Okay? Particularly, Ridge Example is a good example. Ridge Avenue is a good example. It's a commercial corridor. It's important to keep the traffic maintained. So they're doing materials on demand. They have an off-site storage location, and they're bringing in pieces of pipe as they need them. Consolidation of your stored materials, rather than laying it down the road along the trench. Maybe, I haven't decided this yet, maybe we will allow on-street storage in some instances, but we'll want it all in one particular location, a controlled location, probably a fenced location, such that the local kids aren't climbing all over this pile of pipe. And installing chain link fencing around laydown areas. This is kind of one of my things. I like chain link fencing. I think it's very pretty. I like to see the work site enclosed. I like to see the laydown area enclosed. If at all possible, if space allows, which it doesn't on most small residential streets, I actually like to see the entire contractor area enclosed, including trails, parking, everything else. Not usually an option on most Philadelphia streets, granted. Another measure that we've been considering is not allowing open excavations. So at the end of every business day, any excavation must be backfilled and temporarily surfaced. They are doing this on Ridge. Seems to be working out. We would look for temporary asphalt paving or some form of semi-permanent surface restoration, not just stone.
These iron plates that cover up the holes there.
Maybe. There are problems with those as well. That's not decided yet, I'll put it that way. One important thing that I've learned that I didn't know was that PennDOT actually doesn't permit them. So on any state highway, you're actually not supposed to use plates, period. I didn't know that. Did you know that? I didn't know
The state
that.
doesn't own all the highways.
State doesn't own all the highways. Some of them are city streets, and the streets department's okay with them. We're also gonna be, for sure, this will be to some degree in the new specifications, increasing the contractor responsibility for general site appearance. What we don't know is specifically what that's going to entail. Things that have been talked about are things like keeping your vehicles clean and graffiti-free, leak-free, having a pollution control plan, trash collection for the workers, right? Bathroom facilities, whether that's requiring a porta-john on every site, whether that's requiring an off-site bathroom facility. There's been some talk about doing away with construction trailers unless it's an off-street facility and requiring a rental. There's also been an issue that we've run into on occasion where on these small residential streets, basically you're closing the street and then trash collection for the residents becomes an issue. And how we handle that. Is it the contractor's responsibility then to enable the trash to get to the end of the block on trash collection day? Is it the resident's responsibility? Is there a alternate pickup point that needs to be coordinated with the sanitation group? Not sure yet. Daily mechanical sweeping. As I said, there is standard language currently that says daily sweeping is required, but it doesn't really define what that means. We're leaning heavily towards requiring mechanical sweeping of some sort. Hasn't quite been decided how that will work on, again, these very, very small streets. Other things that are being considered is having the contractors, you all, develop a quality of life plan. So, just as on some of these green projects, you develop your own erosion and sediment control plan, since it's based considerably on your phasing, you would also develop a quality of life plan based on your schedule and phasing. Okay? It would then be conditional on keeping an update with your inspector, right? So that at any given phase, you're both on the same page. And everybody understands what's expected at that time. It would also enable public affairs, when they talk to the affected residents and businesses, to know what's going on, because here's the schedule and here's what's expected of them. Right? It would include your E&S plan. It would include pollution and spill plans. It would probably also include a more stringent version of the maintenance of traffic requirements. Currently, what Streets Department is asking for doesn't seem to be working for us. We haven't quite figured out where that's going to land either, but we really want to ensure that in all instances, affected businesses have sufficient access and affected residents have sufficient access at the end of the workday. There are also issues with paratransit that I'm aware of, and a number of other traffic control problems, even in instances where the Streets Department issues a full street closure. These are just various complaints that we've gotten about not just the green projects, all of our projects, and as a department, we really feel responsible for addressing. And you guys are going to have to help us with that. So, proposed implementation of these more stringent requirements, as I mentioned, public parcels are a big one. So, if we're working in a schoolyard, for instance, there will be specific measures related to working in a schoolyard. For instance, School zones are smoke-free. That will apply to all individuals on the work site, period. It's not our rule, we're just enforcing it. Playgrounds, parks, okay? These are public access facilities. The public has some expectation that we're going to keep it neat, we're gonna keep our footprint minimal, and they're gonna have some benefit at the end of the day, right? High use areas, so Ridge Avenue, commercial thoroughfare, major thoroughfares, say Market Street, if we were to work there. These, again, high pedestrian volume areas, high traffic volume areas, high commercial areas, even very dense residential areas. So if you had a series of apartment buildings, right, all of a sudden the shut-off notice doesn't affect 50 people, it affects 5,000 people. That might require some special measures. Okay. We're also going to consider doing this on all green projects. So even a water sewer project with green component, you may see these additional measures. I haven't quite figured out how that's gonna work yet. And if it does work well, and if we do find a good way to define this that everybody's comfortable with, and that seems to bring us the level of service that we're looking for, we're probably gonna put it on all of our capital projects in the future. I'm sure there are questions. No?
Just shock. No.
Okay, well, listen, I got it. You see, you know, see some of these construction sites where they have the crane and the crane is, it's obviously they stopped working and they're holding up like a compressor or something from the crane, they lifted it off the ground in order for people not to steal it or whatever, you know. Is that allowed? Is that like a proper practice? And all this struck me as being so dangerous.
I would say that was perfectly allowable as long as it was within a restricted access area. So as long as it's within the fenced-in contractor laydown area, wherever that may be, really the public shouldn't have access to that for it to fall in the middle. So if it falls, it falls.
That's probably more OSHA issue than it is with the water.
Kind of, yes. Here's as well. Anything else? I realize this whole site management quality of life thing is a little hazy for us. No, we don't have the payment figured out.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are there any other specific rules for landscape installators, or they're just, watch your site, clean your site?
Okay, that's a good question, actually. And that's something that we haven't really directly addressed yet. But typically, since the landscaping contractor is coming after the heavy construction, the GC, we have seen in some instances where they've excavated out the backfill to put in a tree or something, and it's become a mess. Since we don't directly contract with the landscaping subs, we would go to the general contractor and say, your site's dirty. So, to some degree, that's between you and them. But yes, we would absolutely want the site to be just as clean, or if not more so, once the landscaping was finished. Because that's usually the last phase of the project. Another thing we've seen is we've had washout. So when the contractor is done doing their installation of fixture X, they want to wash out their concrete truck, their landscaping equipment, whatever, and they're washing it into one of our inlets. Well, that's strictly no, can't do that. However, if you make arrangements with the GC, you can wash out into a controlled tub or even one of our inlets if it's still closed, and then back to that inlet clean before we take possession of it as a department. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is it
Just
dangerous?
expand
What
on
is
that a little
responsible?
bit. The TSI maintenance installation, once our contract is conformed, we're gonna be bringing in our subcontractors and our contractors. Tell them our expectations for our surface and subsurface maintenance crews.
Yes.
So when do you expect this quality of life specs to?
Right, the tap, the furlough connection.
I wish I knew. They are, like I said, they are running the Ridge Avenue project with the pilot version. We're trying to figure out as a department sort of where we wanna land and what the limits are and what implementation we want. I expect, and this is personal opinion, I expect to see some version of this on the green infrastructure projects, probably in the next large letting of them. On water sewer projects, possibly sometime thereafter, depending on their location. So we may bring this to a quicker implementation on things that are like a commercial corridor or a high visibility district. Not really sure yet.
So it's just gonna phase in over time with
Yes.
the project?
Yes. The inspectors are going to be, I would say more or less immediately, being stricter about what's already in the contract language. So the daily sweeping, neatness, general kind of stuff like that. But these, what I was calling the proposed changes, right? That's gonna really depend on what contract you're getting. The current intent is to have it in a separate specification section, but there's no guarantee on that either. So unfortunately, every time you bid, please read the spec. I know as a specifier, I say that all the time, but
But we will keep everyone up to date on, changes with the quality of life specs and, other items. So at our next seminar, we'll be able to take it a little further and let you know where we are with this. And, you know, again, you have our contact, you know, we'll post information. We will post Pete's, presentation online, so people have access to that. If you wanna share that with, you know, other people in your company, that would be great. So, yeah, we'll sort of keep everyone up to date. And thank you for coming today. I know it's, 2 hours is a big chunk of your time, so we appreciate you spending your time with us to, give us your feedback and also to stay up to date on what we're looking to do.
please stop by the demo trailer outside.
Yeah, demo trailer right outside.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.